So thank you all for joining this afternoon. So I'm Chris Johnson here at EPCC. I lead the eCSE program. As hopefully you'll have seen, we have our first eCSE call now opening and under the ARCHER2 service. So the call opened last week, so we thought that would be a good time to do this virtual tutorial to explain basically what it's all about and how you apply. So this first slide here is just really explaining the license for these slides, and if you want to reuse any of the material, the instructions there are for what you should do. So the ARCHER2 service has a number of partners. So it's funded by UKRI, with specifically EPCC and because the research councils involved. The CREA providing the hardware, and EPCC at the University of Edinburgh will host the machine itself and also run the service provision service known as SP and computational science and engineering service CSE, of which the eCSE is a part. So I'm going to start the talk with an overview of what the eCSE is and what its aims are. I'll talk about the kinds of things that you could do as part of an eCSE project. So during these slides, I'll refer back a bit to the eCSE that we ran under the ARCHER program, ARCHER service, which should give you a good idea of what it's about for this time. And then near the end of the talk, I'll talk a little bit more about the details of how you actually apply. I have a small video of myself sort of demoing, putting in a proposal. Hopefully that will work. It certainly worked when we tested it half an hour or so ago. But if there's any problems, I have a few screen grabs at the end which I'll use, and I intend to put a recording of it up separately anyway. And then finally, there is a chance for questions. If you have any questions as we go along, please do put these in the chat. My colleague Lorna Smith is here online, so she'll keep an eye on the chat. She's involved in the eCSE well, so we should be able to answer questions as we go along. And of course, we can follow up on anything if you have any questions that require a bit more discussion. So what is the eCSE for? Well, eCSE, the program funds software development within the ARCHER2 community with the aim of improving research carried out or via ARCHER2. In terms of the mechanism for this, it actually funds RSEs to do software development work. So this is real funding for people's salaries to do the development. So I'll talk a little bit about costings and the kinds of projects it can cover in a minute. But I should point out that what we mean by RSEs are really just people who have the skills to carry out software development in this kind of research context. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have RSE in your present job title or anything like that. So we are, of course, aware that ARCHER2 hardware isn't in place yet, but if you go onto the ARCHER2 website, you can see some information about it, so you know what ARCHER2 will actually be. So this call, I should point out, covers the GPU hardware and the CPU hardware and not the G part. So it's focusing on the CPU hardware that you'll see described there. So the ARCHER2 eCSE program follows on from the very successful eCSE program that we had under ARCHER2's predecessor, ARCHER. And the program will be similar with what we hope are a few improvements. So I'll describe a little bit about what happened under ARCHER, as this should give you an idea of the scale of the project and the kind of things that were involved. So under ARCHER, we had 14 FTEs available to the 6 years of the main service. I say most, as we had 14 available for the first 5 years, and then the 6th year, it was just well, 60% of that. So it wasn't quite 14 for the whole thing, but almost. So that meant that we were actually contracted to fund 941 person months of projects. In the end, via various cost savings, we managed to fund an extra 32 person months. So we funded a 973 person months spread over 100 different eCSE projects. And these were funded, these RSEs were funded at 26 different institutions around the UK. And there's a little map on the right that shows where they were located, and you can see the darkness of the green blob shows you how many there were. So you can see, obviously, we had quite a few up in Edinburgh, but there were quite a few in London, but all over the place, from Plymouth over to Belfast, York, all sorts of places. And I'll show you more about how you get information about previous projects before, so you can see where they were and who was funded. In fact, here on the next slide. So if you look at this slide, what we have, if you go to the ARCHER website, you see the kind of work that was done under the eCSE program under ARCHER. So if you go to the eCSE pages within the community section, you can see something that looks a bit like the picture there on the right. And that links to projects and technical reports from those projects. It also, if you go to the training pages, you can look up webinars that we had from previous projects where there were people describing what they've done. And we're also happy to put you in touch with previous people that worked on projects previously from within your field or elsewhere, so you can get a general idea of what it's all about and what the process is like. So on this slide, I have sort of fairly high-level purposes and aims of the program, and then what I'll do on the next couple of slides is show what that really means in practice. So the program aims to provide funding for the ARCHER2 user community to develop software in a sustainable manner for ARCHER2, and the idea being that we sustain key codes for the UK computational science community. And it's to facilitate efficient use of ARCHER2 resources through enhanced code performance and functionality. Our core values here are openness, independence, transparency, and we aim to run a not-for-profit service that is value for money to the HPC user community and beyond. Okay, so as I said, they're fairly high-level aims. So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, we aim to fund at least 12 FTEs throughout the service. We fund projects at the 80% FEC costing level. So this is the FEC is full economic costing, is the costing model generally used by UK institutions for these kinds of projects. But if you have any questions about that, do get in touch. I should point out that these 12 FTEs are all for eCSE projects. We have other funding to fund the core CSE team here up in Edinburgh. These 12 FTEs are all for people such as yourselves to be funded to work on eCSE projects. So funding, yeah, the obvious question then is, who can this actually fund? You know, what kind of RSEs, where can they be located? Well, RSEs can be located at the institution of the PI. They could be at some third-party institution, so not with the PI or not with us. They could be from the ARCHER2 centralized CSE team in Edinburgh, or they can be any combination of the above, whatever works for the particular team to get the work done for your project. Individual projects can fund between 3 and 12 person months in total across all technical staff. So you have to add up the person months involved from anyone, whether they be from your own institution or from the ARCHER2 centralized team, and that needs to come between 3 and 12 person months. I'll explain a little bit more about smaller projects when I talk about the lightweight eCSE in a little while. And the bottom point there, where we say that the funding will be allocated using an open, fair and peer-reviewed funding program. The point here is that we have an independent panel, so it's important to know that EPCC don't make the decisions on who gets funding. We have an independent panel who decides on that. EPCC does put in technical has a technical input to the panel via the CSE team, but we do not actually take part in the decisions. That's the independent panel with an independent chair who does that. So we aim on a series of regular calls. There'll be 3 calls per year. So the service will be not for profit. So as I mentioned before, we managed to fund more person months under ARCHER than originally contracted for. And this time we're aiming to well, we will provide 12 FTEs, at least 12 FTEs. If it turns out that the costings for those are slightly lower than anticipated, then the money simply gets ploughed into funding more projects. So we won't make any profit on this. We are very much recognise that support for early career research is important. So we expect many of the RSEs to be at that stage in their development. In addition, we invite early career researchers to panels so that they can see the kinds of things that are discussed, so they can come along as observers. So this helps the early careers themselves. It also helps with openness when we have an observer on the panel. So more information will be made available about this on the website in due course. Okay, so what kinds of things can an eCSE fund? So there are several different things. You could be looking at the implementation of algorithmic improvements to an existing code, which you would want to do in a portable manner to run on ARCHER2. You might be looking at improving the scalability of software on higher core counts than is presently possible, again in a portable way, so that you could run it on ARCHER2 and elsewhere, and run on multiple different kinds of core counts. You might be looking at improving a code in terms of sustainability and maintainability. You might have a code that presently runs perfectly well, but is very, very difficult to maintain or to understand. So you might want to look at restructuring the code so that it improves the sustainability and maintainability. You might want to be putting in improvements to a code that allow new science to be carried out. You might be wanting to port or optimize a code to run efficiently on ARCHER2, maybe add new functionalities to an existing code. Or you might be looking to develop a code that presently runs on a tier 2 level system, like a regional system, to run up to an Archer on ARCHER2, so just to scale up. It's important to note here that the code you have at the moment should be at least able to run on a tier 2 system. So we're not looking here at funding, say, serial codes and to parallelize them. We're looking here for codes that would already run at least a tier 2 level system that could scale up to ARCHER2 as part of the project. This is really where the technical evaluation comes in, which I'll describe in a few minutes. The only thing to point out here is what this doesn't fund. So this is not funding for scientific research. So you could be looking at, say, implementing an algorithm, but you wouldn't be using this funding for doing algorithm research itself. And also, it's not for doing any kind of production runs or anything like that. We do provide a small allocation of time, computing time on ARCHER2 for you to run, to run tests and to see your code running, but it's not for doing any kind of production runs or anything like that. So finally, as I said, the projects here should be for funding between 3 and 12 person months. We recognise that there can be a need sometimes for slightly smaller projects here, say up to 3 months, say between 1 and 3 months, for making very small improvements to projects. So something that's larger than in-depth support that we would offer anyway, but less than a full eCSE project. The idea here is that there'll be a lighter weight process for applying. It will still fund staff embedded within research groups. We plan to make this available from the next call. But we're just seeking input from the panel about the appropriate review procedure and so on, and a bit more concrete information about hardware timescales and so on. But that will be advertised again in due course. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to actually applying for an eCSE project, and hopefully this will give you a bit more of a view of what a project would look like and how you apply. So the first call is open. So that opened back on the 19th of May. So technical evaluation documents must be submitted to ARCHER2 service desk by 4 p.m. on the 16th of June 2020. And then final deadline for full proposal submission is 4 p.m. on the 7th of July 2020. And it's important to note here that we really cannot accept late proposals. It's just not fair on those who have got everything in on time. So that there's also not that much time for the review procedure. So we really do need to have everything in by the deadline. So please do try and start proposals early, and just let us know if you're having any problems with submission or connection or anything like that. I'll explain a bit more in the coming slides of how these two deadlines work. So note that projects can start 6 months after a call is closed, but due to the fact that we have had some hardware delays, and obviously there's a current health situation, there may have to be some flexibility in this. There is some information about this, so do just get in touch if you have any questions, if you have any particular constraints on start dates, and we will discuss this. So the place to go to look for information about the eCSE call, obviously you can ask, send in queries to the service desk, but the obvious place to go to first of all is the eCSE pages on the website. So there is a link there at the bottom of that page. I think you'll find it easily enough. And when you get there, you should see something looking a bit like this. And that's hopefully where you should find everything. There's links to all the various documents and everything there. So for those of you who've applied for an eCSE under ARCHER previously, it's important to note that there have been a few changes. These are important to note anyway, even if you're new to the process, because you need to know about them for applying anyway. So we now have a two-stage application process. So a technical evaluation documents can be downloaded from the website. They should be filled in and sent to the ARCHER2 service desk by that first deadline on the 16th of June. So this form concentrates not so much on the work that's going to be done, but on the codes that are going to be worked on. So you should submit that, fill in the form and submit it to the service desk. And then while you're doing this, you can be filling in the online form in the SAFE, which consists of a web form, and there's also a template there for doing the main proposal. Then the final submission deadline is on the 7th of July, and there you should submit all the documentation, including the completed technical evaluation form, which you will have by then. I would encourage you to submit for technical evaluation early. You don't need to wait for that 16th of June deadline. These documents are important, and they do get passed on to the panel, and we can support people in putting these together. So we do offer consultancy sessions and code checks where we can help you here to get scaling data, or just to discuss your code and see what's the best thing to do it. One good thing you could look at, if you go back a couple of weeks, we had a Spectrum of Support virtual tutorial, which if you look back on the website, you can, if you didn't catch that, you can go and watch that, and that describes all the various support mechanisms you can get and how the eCSE fits into that. So as I say, this two-stage application process is new. We didn't have that before, so it's important to note that. So you take note of the two deadlines and the documents that are needed. The thing that's new here is that in order to for other project members to join the project, so other than the person who starts the proposal in the SAFE, anyone else who is joining the project should be invited to the proposal via the SAFE, and must have accepted the proposal before submission, before final submission. Otherwise, they will not be considered part of the team. So we do this for two reasons. So it's firstly just basically through NISI. GDPR considerations mean that we have to do this. You can't just randomly add people to proposals without them necessarily knowing. You have to invite them, and they have to have accepted, so that they know their details are there in the proposal. Secondly, it also ensures that the whole team are engaged and committed to the project, so that we know that a co-I really signed up to being a co-I and so on. So when you invite people, there are various allowable roles. So you can make someone PI. You don't necessarily have to be the PI yourself to to apply. You can make various people co-I. So we have just one PI. You need to have a co-I, and there should just be one So you need to have a PI, and there should be just one PI. You can invite multiple co-Is. Your project needs to have technical staff, and you can also, there are also roles of contact or just project members. So contacts are people that just will receive any emails from relating to a project. Members are people that have edit rights but no other particular role. Technical staff, when they get invited to join the proposal, they should add their own CVs. And it's important that they add a CV there so that we can assess their ability to do the work. Other team members should provide a track record. There's a box there for doing that. So when they accept, they should log in and provide their own track record and describe there what they'll bring to the project. And that's a place for them to also describe any previous work that they've been involved in, sort of eCSE work or relevant. Or in the case of PI or co-I, it may be relevant management experience for managing these kinds of projects. One thing I would say is that when you invite people to the SAFE, in the SAFE to join the project, please use the email address that particular person uses in the SAFE. Or if they haven't signed up to the SAFE, use the email address that they would use when they join up to the SAFE. So you'll need to get in touch with those people to work that out. If you send an invitation to a wrong email address, that you can then just, that person can just ignore the email and you can send another invitation. So it's not a disaster if you send it to the wrong email address, but it's just a bit smoother if you get the email addresses correct to start with. Note that it's optional how many co-Is you have or whether you have contacts or other members. You have to have a PI, but note that you cannot submit without technical staff. It is possible to submit with an unnamed member of staff, so somebody hasn't been decided yet. That we don't recommend that, but that can be done. We'd need to check that box and make it clear in the proposal that that was what was happening. But the technical staff they are part of the proposal, and they are, their skills are assessed as part of it. So we recommend that you have technical staff signed up to the project. And as I say, you will not actually be able to submit a proposal unless there is a named technical member of staff, or unless you've checked the unnamed box. I'll say a bit more about unnamed in a minute. So the other thing that is required is that we do require costings. So what you have to do is, so you will use the FEC model. If your institution does not use FEC, or you think it's irrelevant for some reason and you want to use, you need to use a different model, then please do get in touch, but where possible, please use the FEC. Costs of the project are one of the things that are assessed when we look at the project to check that everything's value for money. And what you'll be asked to provide, you're asked to provide the 100% FEC, full economic costing, for each member of staff. The system will then work out 80% FEC, which is what would then be paid. Note that this funding only includes technical staff, so it should include direct and indirect costs, but not additional costs such as PI or co-I costs. Travel is given separately from above. There's a section in the form which we'll see in a minute which describes the travel. This can include travel for project members traveling within the UK to meet each other, any of the project members. Funds are limited here, so do see the guidance document which describes how what is funded and what level we fund things to. There is a separate fund available later to allow activities that showcase the outcome of eCSE work, and if you want to apply for that, then you can get in touch at the time, closer to the time when you'll need it. Oh, and as I started to mention earlier, if your institution does not use FEC, please do provide the equivalent costing. But if you're not using FEC, we do recommend that you get in touch beforehand to discuss this, so we know what to expect and we can guide you. So as I mentioned, costings do not need to be provided for unnamed staff if you tick that box, and you do not need to provide costings for Archer CSE staff. There's a box for you to tick for that because we have our own costs. We know our own costs. And as I said, I don't recommend that you use unnamed staff. If that's necessary, there is a box to tick for that. As I mentioned before, because yes, the ability of the technical staff to work is one of the things that's assessed, and that's considered together with PI and COI expertise. So, beginning an eCSE application. So, if you go onto the call page, which I pointed you to earlier, you'll find links to the technical evaluation form, an MS Word document, proposal plate, again, an MS Word document, and then there's a PDF of the guidance document, which should tell you basically the sort of things I'm telling you now, plus a lot more. So do really please have a look at that document. It should answer most questions, and if you still have questions, just get in touch. So to begin a proposal, the first thing you do is you go into the SAFE. You'll need to enter a project title. You can then go in and add subject area and research area. So I think I've got to mention earlier. So this the remit here for this call is for projects that fund or that work on software in the remit of EPCC. So there are projects within the NERC remit are not eligible here. So you have to go in and select the remit when you apply when you first apply for the apply for the project. So when you've clicked on that in the SAFE, that's enough to start a proposal off. You can then submit this technical evaluation document to the ARCHER2 service desk by the deadline, the technical evaluation deadline. The technical evaluation form asks you to describe the main codes to be worked on during the project in terms of performance and scaling of the code on ARCHER or equivalent, sustainability and maintenance, and then the availability of the code to the code for ARCHER2 users at the end of the project. So we recognize here that obviously you don't have ARCHER2 yet, so you'd be looking at the performance and scaling of the code on ARCHER. Say or equivalent. There are some cases where you may be running on a tier 2 system, and that's fine if the end result of the project is going to be that it could be suitable for ARCHER2. So you may want to show code scaling for a tier 2 system and describe how that would scale up to ARCHER2 at the end of the project. So when you submit the technical evaluation, the evaluation will be returned to you as a PDF in good time for your final submission. So while the technical evaluation is underway, you can get on with inviting team members, getting the costing information required, completing the proposal form, filling out the online form, and getting any letters of support. So we do recommend that where possible you get letters of support. Generally speaking, what we're looking for here, or what the panel are looking for here really, if for example you're looking to do code development on a particular piece of software, if the main code developers support this work, then a letter of support from them will be good. The other kinds of letter support that are useful are for people who are in need of the functionality that you are going to put into a code. So if you can show that there is a need for this via letters of support, that's useful. And those are the kinds of letters of support that the panel look for, rather than just sort of warm words from people saying that they generally support the project. It's it's from the main developers and real users who will use the things that you're going to implement. They're the sorts of things that the panel will be looking for, and they can all be added. So for the actual proposal template, which should also be added along with the completed technical evaluation when you submit, there's a proposal template which sections on project objectives and success metrics. Also, you should give a project overview and any technical information and a work plan, and also describe the impact and benefits. There's more information in the guidance about this. So this should all be completed and attached as PDFs. The system will only accept PDFs of everything, and along with the technical evaluation and so on. And then that all must be submitted and in by the 7th of July. Okay, so what I'm going to do, the final thing I've got here is I'm going to do a quick demo of submitting a proposal. I think that I hope will be useful for two reasons. One, because it hopefully directly useful if you're actually wanting to submit so you can see it, but it also should show you the sorts of information that is required. So I'm just finding that. So here we go. So I hope now you can see a picture of the safe. Please shout up if not.
Chris, I was just going to say you've got a comment in the chat.
Okay,
So
let's
you might want. So might be worth doing it before.
So the answer, so the question was, the guidance document says letters of support from UK research groups. Can I confirm this means you don't want letters of support from non-UK users development, even if they fit the description? No, if they fit the description of, I mean, if for example, they were code developers, your code maintainers, then they may not be in the UK, even though the users will be in the UK. So it's not exclusively UK. So if it's people who will use the code, then we'd be looking for people within the ARCHER2 community. But there could be cases where letters of support from people outside of the UK would still be useful. There's no restriction. I mean, you are able to submit you're able to submit letters from support from any research group really. But certainly, if they fit the description I gave, that you're perfectly welcome to submit from non-UK users. Okay. So yeah, do feel free to add any questions in there, and we'll keep an eye on them. Or if you want to follow up on that with anything else, that's fine. So what I've got here is a little video, which hopefully you can now see. So this was me submitting a proposal. So I'll go through and I will just run through the video. I see there's some more questions coming, and I'll go back to those when we've done the video. This is me logging into the safe, from me logging into the safe right to the point of submitting. So the video is 7 minutes and 22 seconds long. I might skip over a couple of bits because I know it's getting late, but that shows that it is hopefully not too long, not too an arduous process to actually submit. So I'm going to start here. So unfortunately, the very top is truncated, but I hope that's not a problem. So so first of all, you log into the safe. So hopefully you should see that going now. So I log in there, and then what you do is navigate up to the top, and you'll see there's an eCSE section, and you click on funding calls. There you see new funding application, and then you read the blurb there, click on create. And then what you do is you select the funding call. There's only one available, and then you type in this will be your project title. So I'm just going to give it a demo title here. Create. And then you'll actually see the proposal form itself. So now you actually, I'm just scrolling down there so you can see it all. So there's various sections to fill in. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill in the basic details. So subject area. So here I'm going to choose chemistry, just making something up here. And then, as I say, this can only be only proposals from the EPCC remit are allowed here. So I'm going to update. Then what I'm going to do is your project will need a PI. Oh, sorry. First of all, I'm going to select a consortium. So if your project is relevant, is work within a particular consortium, you can add that. If not, it doesn't matter. We then need to add a PI. So you can invite someone to be a PI. To make things easier, I've just clicked add myself as PI here. And then you could add co-Is, other project members, which you could then promote to co-I or whatever. I'm then going to add some technical staff. Again, to keep things simple, I'm just going to add myself as technical staff. That wouldn't be the usual thing to do necessarily, but I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to type in my role. So here I would describe what the role I would have in the project, the technical work I was going to do, and I might mention past projects that I've been involved in. Then I'm going to start date for the actual work. So I'm just going to put 1st of October here. So technical effort. So I'm going to be doing 4 months work on this project. I'm going to put the total, I'm just making a number up here for the total FEC cost. And then existing funding, any existing funding that I've got at the moment. So I'm just going to say none there to keep it easy. And again, to keep it easy, I'm just going to put myself in here. So I'm just going to put my own email address in there. Now, as an EPCC staff member, I would usually tick the box to say so, but I'm not going to this time because I want to show you how to add a costing document. So I can then edit, add a costing document. Sorry, the information in the box above has disappeared, but that is just being fixed as we speak. So I'm going to add my CV there. And then I'm going to add, say these are just dummy documents, dummy costing documents. I'm going to add proposed start date. So that's going to be, I'm just going to put the same start date as the technical work. And then we're going to be working on this 100%. So 4 months work, 4 person months over 4 actual months. So there's then some information about codes to add, about usage of the code. Don't be too put off by this. So I'm just going to choose CASTEP, just a random code. I'm then going to choose the number of users of the code, which I've looked up on the actual website, and the number of users worldwide. So these numbers can be approximate. All we're looking for here is to explain the, just basically for you to explain where the numbers come from. And this is just useful. Worry if these numbers are low. In some cases, there may be a code you're working on that has 1,000 users. In some cases, it may be just a handful, but that's fine. We just need to know this so that we can assess it properly. So how I got that number of users was I looked at the past month of on the Archer website for how many users. That showed there were 13 CASTEP users. So I'm assuming there's between 10 and 100 generally. And then global users, I just looked up online and I found there were 1,400 research groups using CASTEP. So I'm just putting in, 850 users groups. So I just put 1,000, above 1,000 people there. And then I'm going to say that I expect that about 5% of you users will benefit from my work here. But as I say, these can be estimates just to describe how you got them. I'm then going to go through and I've actually missed a section out here which I will come back to. You'll see that in a minute. So this is really here just where to add any particular tools or compilers. So it says installed on ARCHER2. I mean, for now, I would just put anything that you need that is already installed on Archer, and then we can work out whether this will be on ARCHER2 as well. And then anything additional which is not on Archer, and then we can work out if that would need to be installed. So any licenses or so on that you need. It should be fairly self-explanatory and described in the guidance document. So travel, I'm just going to keep this simple and say none. So there is guidance on what travel is available. So I'm going to say no travel, 0. And finally, I'm going to add my proposal document. And the completed technical evaluation document is a PDF. And then I'm not just going to do it just now, but you can also and so one thing, if you note at the bottom, look, it says I can't submit yet because I've missed a section out. So it's telling me that I've missed that out. So I go back up. So I missed out the area of work. So here you just select what kind of work you're doing, and you can select all that applies. So I'm just going to say that this is a project focusing on performance improvements. And then update. And then there's options there for you to do things like add. So you can take a look at the proposal. Once you're ready, I could add letters of support there if I wanted. And now I'm ready. I'm just going to submit. Yes, submit. And then if I look up at the top to the eCSE funding, then what you can see there is that the proposal would be there if I wanted to go back to it. Now I've submitted. So now I have submitted a proposal. So that's sorry. So I did show you the whole thing. So that took 7 minutes and 23 seconds. I don't expect you necessarily to be able to submit in quite as quickly as that, but hopefully it shows you that the actual process of submitting in the SAFE isn't too onerous. So let me just go back. So I see there are some questions. So what I'll do is I've only got one more slide, so I'll put that up and then I'll come on to the questions. So let me just go back to the slide. So I'm going to go back to share files, go back to the P. Okay, so that was basically how you submit. So what I've done there is I've gone through and described eCSE program and the call that's open and how you submit. I realize I haven't gone on to describe so much about the reviewing process and things like that and criteria we look for, just because I'm aware that the talk's quite long already, but that is all in the guidance document. So the first ARCHER2 eCSE call is open. Note the deadline is there for technical evaluation. So 4 o'clock on the 16th of June, then 4 o'clock on the 7th of July for final project proposals for everything to be in. Nothing can be late. Details of the call on the ARCHER2 website. There'll be 3 calls a year. And any questions, please do just ask. So I'm just going across to the questions now. So I think, yeah, so Andrew Brown answered yours. So somebody asked if the code had to be open source. So the code does not have to be open source itself, but it does. It would need to be, the actual code or the running of the code would need to be available to ARCHER2 users. So that's the important thing. So it's not so much about the actual code itself. It's more about the availability of the code in terms of running. But if what's probably best is if you do have a code that's not open source or has some particular licensing restrictions, I suggest what you do is get in touch with us so we can discuss that, just to make sure that that would be suitable. And that's the sort of thing that can be discussed as part of the technical evaluation. When you submit the technical evaluation, if the person doing the evaluation has any questions about the availability of the code or the license, they will get in touch to discuss that.
Can I pick up
yes,
there?
Yes, go on, Lorna, please do, Dovan. Yep.
Well, I was just going to say, you're right. The code doesn't have to be open source, but I think part of the assessment is about any improvements, how valuable they are to the Archer community and beyond. So who's able to use any of the changes to the code? And of course, if a code is open source, people can see these changes and use them. So if it's closed, I think you would need to be quite careful to explain why it's a benefit, still of benefit to the wider community.
Yeah, thank you, Lorna. That's useful. So you also asked whether you confirm that the technical staff can be unnamed and whether member names can be specified or more members adding on later during the project. So yes, the technical staff can be unnamed. As I say, we don't recommend this because that part of the proposal assessment is looking whether the person doing the technical staff or people doing the technical staff have the skills required. If it is necessary, that's fine, but you will have to explain in the application form, how you're going to, either recruit someone or bring someone into the project. So yes, the technical staff can be unnamed. I wouldn't recommend that, but it can be done. You also ask if members can be specified or more members added later on. Well, it's sort of along the same lines, really, that the you have to give apply for a certain amount of effort at the beginning of the project, so you couldn't add more effort to a project later. So the question would then be whether you could change the members of staff during the project. well, that is possible if it becomes necessary. But what we would usually do then is, if you had a change of staffing once the project had started, we would send that on to the panel and get them just to check that they were happy with the change of staffing. So so change of staffing is possible, because we recognise that sometimes this will be necessary as time goes on. But as I said, it's not simply a matter of you can't just move one person out and put somebody else in. You need to we'd need to check that that was still okay. And as I said, we'd need to make sure that we had the overall effort. That would need to stay fixed. Somebody asked here if can the technical staff be a lecturer and the PI and also the PI or co-I of the project? Yes, that can be the case. If in some cases, yeah, that is okay. What we suggest is that if the person who's going to do the technical work, or the person who's going to be PI particularly, is relatively junior, then it's sometimes what we would suggest is that you put in you get a letter of support from a head of department or equivalent, just to show that they would support that within their department, just so that we know that that it is okay for that person to carry out the work. But yes, other than that, we'd look at we refer people to the EPSRC pages for eligibility of PIs and so on. But it is okay for somebody to be a lecturer and be PI or co-I, and also they could be technical staff if they were relevant, if they were suitable for all those roles and had the experience needed. Somebody also asked about the estimated start of service for ARCHER2. I don't have any more information than goes out on the emails from UKRI. So the best place I can refer to you really is just there. Can a team track record help in the valuation if a specific member is unnamed? So, I mean, the track record would only really be for named staff. If you had unnamed staff, instead of a track record, we would be looking for you to describe how you would recruit someone, or what skills that person would have. So that would be there in lieu of a track record.
I think Chris is maybe referring here to PIs and co-Is. So if you had an unnamed member of staff, would a strong track record with the PIs and co-Is help?
So I mean, yes, it certainly would. If they had a strong track record in terms of managing these kind of projects, then yes, that would certainly help. Is that kind of what you meant?
So I suppose I would pick up on that part of the assessment process is whether the named technical member of staff has the relevant skills and ability, has the relevant skills to complete the work in the time frame. So that's why Chris is saying you really shouldn't, or try and avoid unnamed people, because it is part of the assessment process.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So in terms of, somebody asked about GPUs. So I'm not sure about this at the moment. I mean, we're certainly focusing here mainly on the CPU part of the system, but we will advertise if that changes. So I can't answer that at the moment, just because there are still some uncertainties about timescales for hardware and so on. So the question is whether the GPU part, work on the GPU part, would have as much benefit as the CPU part. So so I don't know the answer to your question just yet, but we will make it clear when the call opens. So feel free to keep the questions coming in. And as I say, please, I mean, do get in touch if you have any questions, or you want to follow up on any of the specifics of these for your particular case, and we will discuss that. Because I'm talking here fairly generally, but we're certainly available to answer more specific questions. So yeah, please do just get in touch, and we look forward to receiving proposals from you. Hopefully for this call, but if not, for a call in the very near future. And we will advertise the timetable of calls shortly. So thank you all for attending, and thank you for your interest here. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. So bye, everybody.